Welcome to Style Masterclass, the podcast that teaches women to look stylish and feel confident so that they can show up ready to conquer and slay no matter what size they are. I'm your host, Miss J. You ready? Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Style Masterclass Podcast. This is part of our ongoing special series, Shit My Mama Said. And I have a special guest for you today. I was on her podcast. Now she's going to be on mine. And she has accumulated what she has said, some treats and some goodies for us, y'all. So I just cannot wait for us to chat with Dr. Sharon Grossman today. Please introduce yourself. Tell the people about who you are and who you help.
First of all, thank you so much for having me on. I am so excited to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun. As you mentioned, Dr. Sharon Grossman. I was originally trained as a psychologist, so was doing that for about 2 decades. And somewhere along the way, I decided to really hone in on burnout. And the more I did that, the more I saw that something really interesting was happening. I would talk to my clients, or they would come and tell me what's going on for them. And I would say, that sounds like you're burning out. And so many of them had that aha moment. And I realized people don't realize that they're burning out. They're thinking like they're stressed, they're overwhelmed, they're exhausted, but sometimes they don't even realize that what they are going through is burnout. So I really made it my mission to educate people on what to look out for so that they can have the right kinds of treatment for it. And so I got more and more into that. I started doing some research. I published a book on burnout. So now I've got the 7E solution to burnout, which is really my step-by-step process that I take people through for recovery and to learn the kinds of life skills that can help them prevent burnout as well. So all that is to say that I'm super passionate about the subject. And I was thinking about your podcast and what we're going to talk about today. And a little bit of it kind of ties in a way, because I feel like part of what leads people sometimes to burnout is not just what we think it is, which is our circumstances, but often it's a lot of our programming. And where does our programming come from? It comes from the shit our mamas told us when we were growing up. I got some really fun ones that I've collected from a bunch of my colleagues and my clients that I cannot wait to share with you.
And I love that, you see the connection. I think when we chatted on your podcast, we were like, oh my gosh, like there's so many like overlaps and connections between the work you do, the kind of work I do. Well, we approach them through different conduits. Like we arrive at the same thing. You want humans to feel confident and whole. So I love that you see that connection because I want to dive in. So give us the goodies. Tell us some shit people's mamas have said. I'm dying to hear this.
All right, we're going to take this one at a time. Okay. And insert your commentary as you will. But I had one woman who is in my women's speaker group. Her name is Cheryl. And she said her mom used to tell her, which I thought would relate really well to your whole kind of beauty and style and kind of the other side of your business. But she said, it takes pains to be beautiful.
I hear that so much. Yes.
Yeah.
Beauty is pain. Like, and then I think it's like used to explain like all this horrible discomfort that women put themselves through. And it's like, we just say it like it's normal. Like it's like, that's the way it's supposed to be. And yeah. Did you hear that growing up or was that
no, my mom wasn't one of those like hoity-toity kind of get dressed to the nines person. She worked from home or she would work for a time at our school just to help kind of pay the tuition and things like that. So she never really had to get all dressed up. But one thing I remember is growing up, I really wanted to feel comfortable, especially in my shoes. And I saw so many women wearing high heels and stilettos and shoes that were maybe that looked nice, but certainly were not comfortable. And then the older I got, the more I realized a lot of these shoes actually are not just not comfortable, but they're really bad for your back. And that's where the pain actually happens, right? And not to mention that the more you wear them, the more it starts to kind of create that there's that bone on the side of
Yeah,
your
you
foot.
can actually get bone spurs that you have to get like shaved off.
Yes,
from
which
wearing,
I heard is incredibly painful. So talk about pain in like all these different contexts. This is definitely a myth to be debunked.
Yes, definitely. And I think too, like this idea of grin and bear it, I think belies all of this, like whether it's like the actual physical pain of wearing shoes that are uncomfortable, pants that are too tight. But I think also in the work context, oftentimes there's a lot of like grin it and bear it, suck it up, buttercup kind of like quippy adages. And I'm sure you see some version of that in your work that you do.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's definitely not from like a how you look perspective in terms of what you're wearing, but it's the whole suck it up, work as hard as you need to so that you can be successful and that you can have all the things. And if you burn out along the way, then you have to figure it out. But we're not thinking about that right now. So another fun and probably classic one that a lot of people will be able to relate to is I had one person who I interviewed for my podcast, and she shared that anytime she would be upset, she's like, you could be bawling your eyes out and so upset about something. And then mom would always have the exact same response, no matter what it was. And she would say, have a hot shower and eat something.
I love that. I mean, I'm all about like a snack and a nap if you need it, but I have, this is a new variation on that theme that I love this.
Right. So it was like, we're not dealing with the context. It's like, we've got like a one size fits all solution and you'll feel better after, and we don't have to talk about it.
Oh my gosh. So there's no follow-up after that. She would just shower and food and that's it.
That was the wise advice. And then we have somebody who said whenever they would have a headache, the mom would say, don't think about it and it won't hurt.
Oh my God, I love that so much. I mean, oh wow. I like just talk about like disconnection from yourself. Like, and obviously we love the matriarchy. We love our moms. This is not to, but we have to talk about these things because when we just say them to each other, like a mom saying it to a daughter, and then the daughter goes on and says it in the workplace, and then the workplace, somebody like we say all these things. So they become sort of part of the ether. We have to start talking about them and laughing and being like, really?
Yeah,
really,
exactly.
y'all?
And so here's something that's interesting that's happened with this particular woman. She was saying that to this day, she often forgets that medicines exist for minor ailments because she's been so conditioned to just push things aside, right? To not think about it. If it hurts, like you got to bury it somewhere. And so she's like, oh, I have to remind myself that I can actually take a Tylenol, right? Wow. I mean, these things really do have a big effect.
Yeah. And I think they illustrate bigger contextual issues once we take those and move them to different places. Yeah. Wow. What else you got?
So another person that was on my podcast said that her mom always used to say everything in moderation. And she said, I wholeheartedly disagree with that. She said, if I have a passion and a purpose in this life, she's like, I want to go all out. I want to make sure that, I'm taking care of myself. But her kind of message to people is you don't have to be in moderation or harness that passion. And you shouldn't let society or the opinions of even your mother, hold you back.
Oh, I love that. And here's the funny thing about that advice is everything in moderation. So too with that advice. That advice should only be used moderately in the appropriate occasion. It is not advice that is wholesale for every instance of our life, especially when we feel passionate about something. So yeah, everything in moderation, including that advice. I love that. That's so fun. Okay.
Yeah, so far I've shared ones that are, I would say, kind of mild. Yeah. Right? And now we're going to get to the really good stuff. Are you ready for this?
Lay it on me, girl. Lay it on me.
This is it. Okay. So I had this one person share a whole slew because she had all kinds of motherisms. This is where it gets really fun. Okay. So her mom, as you can, see this, there's a lot of that motherly guilt that was poured on. So she would say, if I died tomorrow, you'd regret it.
Okay, wait. So say that one more time because I want to make sure I heard it correctly.
Yeah. So mom would say, if I die tomorrow, you'll regret it.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't mishear that. That's so awesome. That's not even laying it on mildly. Like mom went straight to her death.
I'm telling you, we're getting to the good stuff.
Okay. Keep going.
So this is like you better think again before you do this, because otherwise I might actually die. Right. There's no drama here whatsoever. Then you're going to feel bad. So you better think about this closely. Right. So we're kind of really, really putting this not too mildly.
Not too mildly. Not at all.
Yeah. Now this one that she shared with me, I wasn't familiar with this sort of expression, but I guess you have to be from the South for this. So she said, you look rode hard and put away wet. And I was like, what the hell does that mean?
Oh, shit. I think that's one of my favorites now. You look rode hard and put away wet. Damn.
Yeah. I was like, please translate into English because I've never heard that, nor do I have an inkling of what that means. And she said, it means you look like a horse who was ridden hard, put away sweaty rather than groomed after.
Damn, that's savage. That is so savage.
So, you know how you talk about people in their janky underwear?
Like that's next level. Those like janky underwear is like ground floor level. Like this is like 80 stories high. Like that is the most savage burn from a mom ever. That's awesome. I love it.
So it just keeps getting better. So she used to say, act like you have some sense.
Yeah, I've heard that one. I like that one. I okay. That's not too bad. That's not too bad.
And when I think about that, I'm like, I say something like that to my son quite a bit. I'm like, use your brains.
Yeah, use your brains.
Use your brains.
Act like you got common sense. Act like your mama raised you right. Like I think there's like variations on a theme, but those make sense. Like
yes,
that's a true momism. This horse thing is next level, but the sense thing I like. That makes sense.
Okay. All right. Then she said, don't bring God into this.
Oh.
I was like, okay.
I need context.
Yeah, I mean, not sure how to turn that one around, but that's an interesting one. And then on the flip side, the mom would then say, this is between me and God.
Oh, but who's bringing... Wait, why is God involved at all? I have questions. I have questions.
we all have questions. This is all out of context. And then she would say the phrase that we've all heard before, you can catch more flies than honey than you do with vinegar.
Yeah, I just had someone on the podcast last week who said that was like a common phrase her mom would use and that it actually has helped her tremendously in business because she didn't quite know what it meant when she was younger. But as a businesswoman, it has been like useful to think about. And I'm like, okay, like I think there's a positive way we could potentially see that. And then the other way we could potentially see it. Yeah.
And then she would say, you're getting too big for your britches. And I'm like, what are britches? And she said, they're trousers. So what it means is you're thinking too highly of yourself. Like you're wearing pants you don't fit in, but you think you do.
Yeah, I've heard some version of that. Not from my mother, but from just humans in general. So, yeah.
Which we could bring back to your whole kind of other business as well.
Yeah, right? I mean,
references to clothing.
And I think that's what's so fun about a lot of these shit my mama said when we talk about them is that there's so many funny, quippy clothing things that we all, because this is what we do, how we do one thing, how we tend to do a lot of things. So when we applied it to style and clothing, it just seemed so normal and natural and believable. And it wasn't until we started to apply it to like our careers, our professional life that we started to be like, well, hold on, wait a minute, what? Maybe I don't want to apply this advice here. Yeah.
We talked a moment ago about this whole idea of like, use your brains, right? Yeah. And you can kind of understand that sort of reference, why a mom might say something like that. But now we've got another kind of next level one where she said, quit being ugly.
Oh, damn. And you know what? I dare say there's probably people who are listening. So, dear listener, if you heard something similar, we're talking about this to kind of poke fun at some of the craziness, like the horse thing, but also to normalize your experience for you. So, if you had something like this shouted at you or told to you repeatedly, like, it's not okay. You're not alone in it. It's certainly not okay. And if you now, as an adult, look back and think something was not quite right about that, or any family story where we talk about it and everybody's kind of laughing, but you're like, funny, not funny. There's a little part of you that's like, it's catching the wrong, like it's catching now. And it feels a little wrong and it rubs you the wrong way as an adult. I want you to lean into that because likely we got to rewrite some stories and change some narratives. And what may have been this funny family story or this quippy thing like, don't be ugly, is not funny. And it is hurtful. And you're going to need some healing from that, which is why we talk about it here in a lighthearted way. But we also want to bring home that these are experiences that are not so lighthearted or fun for a lot of people. And I do want to honor that and respect that and recognize it.
Yeah, because I think those are the kinds of things that are very damaging. And that's where a lot of people's programming gets developed, where they start to really believe that. And who are we going to believe more than our own parents? Right? We look up to them when we're kids and they seem to know everything and be all powerful. And for your own mother to say something like that to you, I mean, really the only kind of message you can take away from that at that young age is there's something wrong with me. I'm not pretty enough. And I have to do something about it. I have to compensate for it. And that's where we see the eating disorders develop and we start to see people just do everything to try to be that people pleaser and to take care of other people and putting themselves on the back burner. So I'm really glad that you have this platform where we can talk about these things.
Yeah, me too. And I love that you brought us such a varied list because I'm sure someone listening was like, oh, yep, I've heard that one. Oh, yep, I've heard of multiple versions of these. So I love that you brought us that list because that's a shared experience probably from like thousands of women who are listening. I'm curious for you, what programming patterns have you heard most frequently in your line of work doing burnout in your area of expertise? Because I'm sure you've noticed some programming patterns over time.
Yeah, I would say the most common thing we see is that desire to prove yourself. That is the beginning of what leads to burnout because it's the feeling that no matter what you do, it's never good enough or it's never enough. So it's like either quantity or quality, right? The things that you do aren't good enough. So that's a quality issue, or you're just not doing enough. And that's a quantity issue. And so it leads to the compulsion to have to do more and to prove your worth. And it's when we couple our self-worth with our productivity that we really get into trouble because that's when we're not listening to our bodies. We're not doing what's good for us. We say there's no time for self-care. There's no time for me, for myself, and for what my needs are. And that's where resentment really sets in because we're like, we're doing so much and nobody appreciates what I do. I don't get paid enough or I don't get acknowledged enough. And then other people will come and ask us for things. And we say, haven't I done enough already? Right. And so this is where the burnout really starts to come on. And I think it really does come back to this idea of if you believe that you're not enough, it's going to lead to that compulsion to prove otherwise. It's kind of that overcompensation that happens, which then brings you into the behaviors that lead to burnout. And then it's really hard to get out of it because what do people know about burnout is what they read in the news, which is, oh, I'm going to take a sabbatical. I'm going to go on vacation. I'm going to take a few days off. But if your mindset hasn't shifted, if your belief structure hasn't shifted, if you still believe that you're not enough, that you need to compensate, or that people don't appreciate you, and whatever it is, whatever that kind of situation is that's going on in your mind, you're going to come away from that vacation maybe feeling a little bit more rested. But as you come back into work, if you haven't changed the way that you engage with your work because of that programming, then even if you did recover, you're going to burn out again and again.
Oh my gosh. I love that you said that because I tend to coach and attract really high achieving women, type A's. They push. Like they're always hustling for their self-worth. And I love that. Like one of the telltale signs you're identifying is like resentment and saying like, haven't I done enough? Like what other telltale signs could we look for that lets us know, okay, this maybe isn't depression or me feeling blue. Maybe this is burnout.
I'll share this. I recently interviewed somebody from my podcast who was talking about her own resentment. And so I've seen a couple of different versions of resentment. Her kind of story may be relevant for somebody listening who is the problem fixer, right? What she was describing is that she made it her mission to fix people's problems before they even register that they had a problem.
Yes.
Right. So she's like running after people, like picking up their scrunchie, or she's like getting up from her seat to make sure that the old lady sits down, and she's holding people like the door so that they can pass. And then when they don't say thank you, she's like, "You're welcome." You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I so know what you're talking about. That's awesome.
Right. It's like when we do something for someone else in an effort to be kind, but then they quote unquote don't appreciate us, and we get really resentful about that, that's kind of a sign. And if that's the kind of person that you are, and if that's the way that you operate in the world, you're going to have a lot of that. It's going to build and build and build until you're just so cynical about everything in the world, right? And cynicism is actually one of the big signs of burnout as well. So you start to see that change in attitude that people have. That is an indication that there's some burnout.
Oh, okay. You know what? In my family, we have a name for that kind of behavior, and prepare yourselves because it's funny in my family. Some of y'all might be offended, but this is our shorthand for that kind of thing. It's called Captain Sabaho. So you're trying to be Captain Sabaho all the time. Like no one asked for your help, and yet here you are volunteering and then upset that you volunteered, but nobody asked you. And I think like I see this in so many amazing, really like I think high functioning, for lack of a better word, but like women who are doing the damn thing, getting a lot done, but then they're running after people to give them their scrunchies, volunteering for committees or things at church or with their children. And like a lot of it's because they've chosen to volunteer for things that like, it doesn't have to be them who's doing the thing.
Yeah. So I think a lot of that volunteering that you're talking about comes from a feeling of guilt. Of if I don't do it, it won't get done. And I feel like it's my responsibility. I have to be the savior, as you talk about. The other version of it that I've seen is people who not necessarily are going above and beyond in all spheres of life and trying to like save the world, but more so are showing up at their job and doing lots of things. And then all the credit goes to someone else. They don't get the raise or the promotion. It goes to somebody else. And so they're like, well, that person's not as qualified as I am, or that person shouldn't get that sort of praise because I'm the one who helped them get to where they are, or whatever it is. And so there's that other resentment that happens also very frequently, especially in the workplace, where you feel like you're entitled to that recognition or that raise or whatever it is, and you're not getting it. And sometimes rightfully so. We see this a lot, especially when there is that gender discrimination in the workplace, but it's not always just like that women aren't getting it. It can be all different versions of that. It can be your race. It can be just your personality. Like somebody is more extroverted and somebody's more introverted. So the extroverted maybe gets it or whatever it is, right? There's all versions of that. And so the people who are left behind who feel like there was an injustice, they're the ones who end up feeling that resentment. And that's the resentment that comes with the story of, I do all the right things. Other people should do the right thing too. And when they don't, I feel frustrated and now I'm resentful. And then the more I kind of think about all this and I'm stuck in that loop of negativity, the more the burnout is building and building.
Yeah. Oh, I recognize myself in that one. That I'm like, ding, ding, that's me. It's 100%. And I think when I was a full-time practicing lawyer, I was definitely feeling that way. A lot of opposing counsel should fill in the blank, blah, 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 blah. Right. So let's say we've identified like, okay, you're maybe the first version, the second version, maybe a mixture of both of them. Right. How do we kind of find our way through this or out of this, if it's even possible? Because I know that's your jam. So give us a little idea that there's some hope and light at the end of this tunnel.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think if you do feel resentful, and now that you have kind of a definition of it, or you have more of a picture of what it looks like and what it sounds like, that's the first step, is really just identifying that there is resentment on board. And if you do identify it, that's really good news, because now you're like, okay, I have a name for what's happening for me. Now I have to apply the thing that works with resentment. And the thing that basically, the way I kind of think about it or explain it is, if you feel resentful for whatever it is, that is an indication that there is a boundary lacking. So if you feel resentful, then the thing to implement is you have to put a boundary in place. So now the question is, what exactly does this look like, right? Or how do I do it? And you have to get really clear on what's happening for you. So if you're the kind of person, as we mentioned in the beginning, who is constantly running after people and trying to fix the world, then maybe it's just about saying, you know what? I need to examine myself and think about, what are the situations where I'm really needed? Maybe instead of running after problems that don't yet exist and trying to prevent catastrophes, maybe I reserve my energy for actual problems. That could be a sort of boundary where you say to yourself, I'm not going to exert energy all over the place. I'm going to reserve it for specific scenarios. It could be that. This is very personal, so everybody has to create their own, right?
Yeah.
Based on your own values and like how you want to be in the world. But again, it always comes back to, I need to rethink the way that I'm engaging in the world. And what does that look like for me, so that it feels good and that I can show up for people, or I can show up for situations in the best version of myself without getting to that place of burnout. So that's addressing really that first scenario. The second scenario is, what do you do if you're the kind of person who's overlooked at work, who's not appreciated enough, who is not essentially seen, which is a human need that we all have? And that's a little bit more complicated, right? Because it's still not totally clear what's going on. Sometimes when we talk about resentment as a perceived unfairness. And the big thing about it is the perception.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm tracking. Yeah.
Okay. So we want to first see, like, what's true about your perception of the situation. And is there anything that we can do to kind of change the way that you're looking at it? Because when you change your story, you change how you feel. So perhaps there is something in that we can kind of expand on and alter and shift. And maybe that in and of itself will do you some good. There are certain circumstances, of course, when things for real are not fair. Maybe you're not being treated well. And certainly we don't advocate for you staying in a situation that's toxic. And so in those kinds of situations, if you've really looked at it objectively and you're like, this isn't working for me, then we might have to look at how to change out of that environment into a more supportive environment. But I always look at that as kind of a last resort, because it's always easy for people when they're in that state to like, okay, I'm just going to leave everything and go. I don't want to deal with this, and I'm like, oh, well, let's slow down for a minute. Let's kind of see, is this salvageable, right? Because the other thing that happens is you might be a person who finds that you bring this sort of drama to everywhere you go. So hopping from place to place isn't necessarily going to be the answer. So we want to get real clear on what's really going on.
Yeah. Which I love, because I think at the heart of it is like, there's no one size fits all solution. Just like in style, the same is true here, folks, right? Like there is no real true one size fits all. So we have to deal with the human in front of us and what their actual story is and what they're bringing with them into these different scenarios, workplace, dressing room, whatever it may be. Like we're all bringing these things with us. So I love that you're not giving us this like, here's some cookie cutter steps, because that's not reality, right? Like it's nuanced. And I think that's where like just acknowledging that so we're not gaslighting each other constantly, I think is so good. So good. So let's say somebody wants to continue this work and they're like, I'm intrigued. I think I might be burnt out. Hell yes to the resentment. Maybe I am the one and I'm dragging this around with me everywhere I go. Like, how do they find you? How do they work with you so that they can help maybe move through this a little bit?
Yeah. So the best place to go is my website, which is drsharongrossman.com. And there's a place there that you can book a chat with me. I offer a 30-minute dial down your stress breakthrough session so people can get on a call and really have a chance to work with me on getting that blueprint that allows you to figure out exactly what's going on and what you need to focus on. And then you can decide if you want to work with me on that, or if if it's a do it yourself or you want to go somewhere else with that. I'm happy to share that information. And I've got lots of resources on my website as well. I've got a link to my book. I've got a podcast as well that you can check out for more stuff on burnout. And certainly you want to come on and listen to my interview with Judith and lots of other goodies as well. And, one of the things that I just wanted to end with is we talk about how there's all of these things that our moms say that sometimes drive us nuts. And I think the other piece to it is that they sometimes contradict themselves. And I think that too can drive you crazy because, coming back to that resentment piece, is like if you're being told to do one thing one time, and then you're being told to do the complete opposite thing the next time. And we kind of talked about that a little bit earlier with the don't bring God into this. And this is between me and God, right?
Right.
There's that whole piece. So I think also realizing that sometimes people are going to throw a whole bunch of crap at you and you have to be able to filter. And that's really important. So we have this mom who on the one hand says, quit being ugly, which is obviously a very hurtful kind of a statement. And then on the other hand, she says, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Right. And so we're getting mixed messages from our parents. We're getting mixed messages from our environment, from our colleagues, from our partners, from everybody, because we're human and we all go through different moods. And sometimes when we're in a certain state, we don't have control over what we do or say. And you certainly can expect that of other people. So I say all that just to say that you have to take things with a grain of salt. And this is your opportunity, even if you grew up in a state of chaos in your home, that you get to clean some of that out and to get a new start on life where you start to feel like you're in control, that you get to make the decision about who you are and what works for you, and clear out any resentments or anything that leads you to feeling chronically stressed, because that's never a good place to be in.
No, I love that's a beautiful wrapping up, because I think that's at its heart what you and I do. We look at the rules people have for themselves, where they got them, rewrite them, dismantle them, and then free them up to go do whatever it is their work is in the world. So I love that. And we've got you in terms of links and show notes, guys. We got you. We'll leave those all there. And thank you so much, Dr. Grossman, for coming on today. I laughed. I was dismayed. We had a whole journey on this episode. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I also just want to share, I have a burnout checklist. So if people are wondering, like, am I burned out and what do I do? That's also on my website. So you can go to drsharongrossman.com/burnout checklist. And that's a free download. And that's a great place to start, I would say.
Okay, cool. Yes. And go check that out, y'all. If there's anything she said that you're like, oh man, I might be burnt out, go hit up that checklist. Definitely binge her podcast and get yourself some help, friends. All right. Thank you. Talk to you later. We're out. Thank you for listening to today's episode. To learn more about how to work with me, go to judithgaton.com. Click on the Start Here button to get access to my free personal style class. I give you a quick style win, a confidence boost, and you walk away with the tools to start getting stylish. Who doesn't love that? See you there. Miss J out.